who briefed journalists after the meeting in Abuja, confirms the receipt of the Southeast Zonal Committee report, which recommended Mr. Ode Okoye as their candidate for the party's Office of National Secretary. According to the acting national chairman, the NEC also received and ratified the composition of zonal committees that will oversee the PDP zoning arrangement for principal officers ahead of the party's national convention later in the year.
Divisions, mistrust, and lingering grievances within our ranks have at times hampered our progress and blurred our vision. We must recommit to healing these wounds and restoring faith among our members.
The BOT chairman has spoken deeply about tolerance, closing rank, humility. We need to do that with the hindsight that we are the only party standing.
Next also received the resolution of the Southeast Zonal Executive with regard to the issue of the National Secretary and to be considered and deliberate upon in the next which is slated for 30th June. NEC also received and ratified the composition of the committee on the zoning of national offices ahead of the national convention.
Now, away from that, but still within the PDP, the North Central Zonal Elective Congress of the PDP, which held on Saturday, May the 24th in Jos, the Plateau State capital, the party's election appeal panel in the region has confirmed that there is no petition arising from that Congress. While briefing journalists in Jos, the chairman of the appeal panel, Senator Marshall Katung, says the panel did not receive any complaints by the close of work on Tuesday after waiting for the mandatory 48 hours stipulated by the party constitution.
We have been here since Sunday, the 25th of May, and our duty was to collate any petitions if there are. And up to 4 p.m. of today, we have not received any petition. So we are glad to report this to the press and Nigerians and all our party faithfuls that apparently and obviously the congresses that took place on Saturday were free, fair, and acceptable to all and sundry. And hence there's no petition as it were.
Away from that, the President, Bola Tinubu, has sent a request to the National Assembly. He's seeking legislative approval for the comprehensive external borrowing plan totaling about $21 billion for the 2025-2026 fiscal period. The request, which is aimed at financing, according to the President, critical projects cutting across various sectors, including the economy, particularly infrastructure, health, education, and water supply, was read on the floor of both chambers of the National Assembly during Tuesday's plenary. The President also sought a domestic bond issuance of 757 billion naira to settle outstanding national pension liabilities.
Request the kind approval of the National Assembly for capital raising of up to USD $2 billion in the domestic debt market towards the implementation of the Presidential Executive Order on foreign currency-denominated financial instruments, that is local issuance program. It has become essential to pursue prudent external borrowing to close the financial shortfall. These funds will primarily be directed towards critical infrastructure projects, including sectors of power, railways, healthcare, amongst others. It will enable the federal government of Nigeria meet its obligations under the CPS and restore confidence in the pension industry. Positive welfare effect on the retirees, as this will enable them to meet their basic needs, such as payments for routine drugs, rent, school fees of their children, and other family needs. This will improve the health and avoid untimely death of the retirees.
Since the borrowing is for the settlement of federal government of Nigeria pension obligations to retirees, it is an essential investment in human capital development, which is allowed under the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007.
All right, so those some of the things we'll be talking about in the program. I'm being joined by a public affairs analyst and political analyst, our friend, Mr. Ajide Ojo, joins us virtually. Mr. Ojo, thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure, Geoffrey. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So let's beam through the polity. I don't know what. Maybe let's start from governance issues before we get to politics. Politics that has to do with the PDP that happened yesterday. Finally, they've had their neck. But let's talk about the latest round of borrowings by the president. So he's listed a few things he wants to do, although some of us would like to see a lot more detail because of the amount involved here. 21 or let's just say above $20 billion in total that is seeking for in terms of external borrowing and also issuance of bonds, pension bonds in that sense because of pension liabilities. So on one hand, we're borrowing to fund, in his words, infrastructure and all the rest. And on the other hand, we're also borrowing for recurrence because pensions are actually recurrent. People have worked and they're supposed to sit by and enjoy their life based on what they've contributed over the years. But poor management has brought us here, and that we're almost borrowing or issuing bonds to be able to get that money to get about almost ₦1 trillion in that sense. What do you make of these new sets of borrowing?
Geoffrey, I'm really concerned about our snowballing debt profile. We're gradually in the debt peonage, and it is a worrisome development because when you look at what we are using to service our debt is almost equivalent of our capital expenditure, budget. And that is very concerning. I have suggested that rather than continuing on a borrowing spree, why don't we sell off some of the assets of the government? There are so many uncompleted projects that are white elephants that we could auction off and use the proceeds to fund our budgets and some infrastructural development. Because over the years, we have over several thousands of uncompleted projects that are not adding value, some at 60, 70% completion. And even if you complete them, are not going to add any value. Why don't we sell them off if we can auction them and use the proceeds to fund our infrastructure? Because while it might sound economically, or I don't know whether that's right, while it might sound logical, as time goes on, you raise the issue of having to fund our pension liabilities. You ask yourself, what has the successive government been doing over the years that made them not to pay attention to their pension liabilities? They were supposed to save this money for pensioners, but we have seen that reckless spending has led us into this coup-d'etat. People have said, okay, we have a budget shortfall. Our projection in the budget 2025 has not been met because, for instance, I think the benchmark for crude oil was 75. Crude oil sale is about 60 or thereabout, $60 per barrel, I mean to say. Then we are still having economic leakages like oil theft, people not remitting monies in due money to the federation accounts and all of that. Perhaps you look at also the fact that our oil production projection has not been met. I think our oil production projection for 2025 budget was about 1.8 or 2 million barrels per day. And we are currently doing about 1.4, 1.5 million barrels per day. So coupled with the drop in the crude oil price, definitely there will be revenue shortfall. But we have seen Nigerian Customs saying that they have been able to rake in more revenues than was initially projected. We know the Federal Inland Revenue Service has also been able to rake in more revenue than projected. So why can't we even this out? And that's the whole essence of even removing subsidies, that we will have money saved to fund infrastructure. So I think we need more transparency around this debt profile issue and management of our debt profile. It's not enough to just say, oh, we are borrowing this to fix our infrastructural deficit. I've given you one sure way by which you can fund this. There is another way, which is build, operate, and transfer. Some of these road projects on BOT, look at the Nasarawa, the Abuja, Kefi, Makote Highway. It has been told, after we borrowed money to fix that road, we have started tolling that road in 2025 for some years, and that will remain so. And we have been told by the Dave Dumai too that the Lagos to Calabar Superhighway, a section of it that has been completed will be told by December this year. That will be a revenue coming in. So there are other funding models that I believe government should have explored rather than just continuing on a borrowing spree, because it will have a deleterious effect on our economy in the long run.
All right, Mr. Ojo, so apparently it looks like we're dealing with cumulative fiscal irresponsibility and lack of prudence in that sense. But I want to throw something that I saw from Okonjo-Iweala. Which do you think the government should adopt? Now, one of the things some of us noticed very early in this budget is that as great as the budget was or is, it's a bit too ambitious, which is why we have a lot of the deficit and all of that. For instance, when you have an election coming in America, you are supposed to project if Trump wins, if Kamala Harris wins, what is going to be the outlook of the global economy. That in itself will prepare you to take either a short or a long position. In the sense, basically saying, whether I take a conservative position. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said what she did in her time was to help the federal government delink the budget from oil volatility. So she took a very conservative position, proposed to the president, say, let's assume the price is going down, which is where we now have the ECA, excess crude account. Now we are doing 75 in terms of our assumption. The crude oil price averages 65, so we're $10 in deficit. So what can we do going? Do you think the government should begin to review some of the way they do projections so that we don't get ourselves into this trap at the end of the day?
I believe so, and I believe we need the national housing and population census like yesterday. Geoffrey, we are planning without statistics, and that's dangerous. We are using 2016 statistics, 2006 rather. 2006 census figures is what we are using to plan for 2025. That is dated. That is an outdated data. So I believe in planning, we need an up-to-date statistical figures.
Oh dear, network. Let's see whether we can reconnect with Mr. Ojo. He was making a very vital point as to our population. As a matter of fact, the last time we knew how many we were as a country was about 19 years ago. Right now, we're just assuming, based on projections, that we're around 220, 230 million people, which is why our GDP plummeted down to, reduced to less than $1 in terms of GDP per capita. Mr. Ojo, you were making a point. Mr. Ojo, if you can hear me.
And it's ago. And the worrisome aspect, we have been planning with very dated data that is not in consonance with modern.
Oh, my world. Okay, apparently the network not quite supportive, but we will see whether we can reconnect again with Mr. Ojo. As I said, I was trying to make a connection between our population size and how we plan, you know. just a simple question. How do you plan when you don't even know how many you are? And we hope that within the time of this administration, we'll be able to do a proper census and use BVAS so that we don't have all those, you know, the things, the strange things we bring into our data. But let's tell you more stories now. That residents of Kolda, Za, and neighboring communities in Hong local government area of Adamawa State are demanding adequate protection from security agencies following recent attacks by suspected Boko Haram terrorists. The resident claimed that the recent invasion of the area by suspected Boko Haram terrorists leading to the killing of 16 residents and destruction of houses and properties hampering agricultural activities in the area. A visit to the affected communities by Channels Television reveals that most of the residents have fled their communities, while a few of them mobilized to defend themselves against the herders who have attacked them.
The part of Zar settlement in Hong local government area of Adamawa State shares a boundary with Borno State and has close proximity to Sambisa Forest. The people depend on farming for their livelihood. Most of the residents had cleared their land ready for this year's planting season when suspected Boko Haram terrorists stormed the community, unleashing terror, killing about 16 of them and burning several houses. The community has remained deserted, while some have relocated to safer grounds. The district head of Nyadil in Hong local government area gives an account of the attack.
These people called hoodlums or terrorists or whatever their names may be, they stormed my village, Kula, at about 5 o'clock p.m. and set the entire village on fire and killed virtually 16 members of that community.
Victims of the attack recount their experience as they vow to defend their land.
They killed my child, burnt my house completely, including my foodstuff. They carry away my motorbike.
The reason why we see us here, we didn't run or we didn't descend to anywhere because this is our fatherland. We are ready to die in our fatherland. We don't want to go anywhere because there's nowhere we can go and enjoy like our fatherland.
The proximity of the communities to Sambisa Forest is identified as a factor responsible for the incessant attacks.
The terrain of these particular areas of incessant attacks happen to be a difficult terrain. So even the military unit that we have in Hong and in Garaha, they are not able to reach those areas of attack.
The district head of Nyadil laments the possible threat to food security if nothing is done by the authorities. As a result of the incessant attacks, the National Assembly had called for the establishment of a military base in Hong local government area of Adamawa State to prevent the renewed attacks by armed groups in the area.
All right, so that's the security situation in Taraba State. But let's get back to the conversation. Mr. Ojo, we're having a bit of a challenge with your network, but you can land on your thoughts so we can ask a bit of more questions around the politics.
So what I said was that I agree with Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's projection that we should have adopted a more conservative benchmark for crude oil production as well as our revenue projection from oil sales. We know that it's a volatile products with volatile pricing, and that should have taught us a lesson. But be that as it may, we are now playing catch up. We do hope in due course this whole thing will thin out. But as I've said, while we may not be earning so much from crude oil, we have improved revenue from the non-oil sector. Taxation is bringing in more money through the Federal Inland Revenue Service. We are getting more from the customs and excise. Even they have surpassed their initial projection. we are also receiving more from other non-oil sector like solid mineral licensing, from the NCC, licensing of spectrum, telecommunication spectrum. We are getting more from National Broadcasting Commission, who are also getting license fees from the newly licensed broadcast stations. So by and large, I think we just need more transparency around this revenue projection and management of our public finance.
PDP, and yesterday they were able eventually to hold their neck, but conspicuously absent Nyesom Wike, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, even Sam Anyanwu's position is under contention, was not at that particular neck meeting. From the visuals I saw, except I didn't see well, but at least to the best of my knowledge, I didn't see any of these people in all of that. But people are saying this is a fragile piece in that situation. In fact, the most contentious issue was now shifted again to June the 30th, which is their next meeting. Do you take PDP as a very serious party ready to tackle their problem and count their losses so that they can move ahead?
Jeffrey, sincerely speaking, PDP is, I don't want to use the word unserious. They keep postponing their evil days. Why do you have to wait till June 30 to determine who is your national secretary? Why? You had the governor of Akwa Ibom State that he is deporting or is porting to APC because of this whole leadership crisis, that he doesn't want to win an election that will be invalidated by the court because the appropriate person did not sign his nomination form. So they said they are going to have their convention in August. Why then are you delaying till June 30 to determine whether it's Ude Okoye or it's Samayawu, or even the one that they have asked to deputize as acting secretary that you have recognized? They have started on this matter. They got the Supreme Court judgment since March, and this is 2 months down the line. They still couldn't have a proper interpretation of what the Supreme Court decision is. In fact, I read somewhere, was it yesterday or this morning, where they said INEC has recognized Samaya as the secretary of PDP. If that is true, would they go to court to challenge INEC that INEC has erred by recognizing Samayawu? So, like you said, it's a fragile piece in PDP, and I just wish them best of luck. But all these old papering over issues is not going to help them. Time is running out. 2027 contestations is in FIFA speech. Is at FIFA speech.
Okay,
and
Mr. Ojo.
I think you have concluded their...
Yes, just to throw in one question before we go. So, one of the things that made Nyesom Wike angry is the effect that he had come to some level of a gentleman's agreement, including withdrawal of cases in court, recognizing of Anyanwu as the national secretary following the Supreme Court judgment, but he said they reneged on that judgment, on that agreement, so he has pulled out. He's going to fight to the end, the sealing of their secretariats with other places they sealed. So on one hand, Nyesom Wike has pitched his tent with the president. Some people say his soul is with the APC, it's just his body that is with the PDP. He has pitched his tent with the APC in terms of who is going to support in the 2027 general election. Do you think he has a moral right to put up any form of argument or condition for peace in that sense? Because people like Sule Lamido, I read somewhere, he's saying that until Wike is expelled from the party, he's not coming for any meeting, and he wasn't there at the next meeting, according to what I read.
Yeah, it's not only, I read that too, Sule Lamido saying that he will not attend any meeting in PDP unless Nyesom Wike and one other person, unless they are expelled from the party. But recall that Wike has gone to court to secure an injunction that he should not be suspended or expelled. I think the court granted him that injunction, but they can go to Court of Appeal to overturn that, because you cannot insist that a party should not discipline you, and yet you are doing an open anti-party. But remember, Geoffrey, it's not only Nyesom Wike that is doing anti-party. Even the chairman of the board of trustees of PDP, Adolphus Wabara, is also doing an anti-party. He has endorsed Alex Otti, a Labour Party governor of his state, for second term. And you think that if your board of trustee chairman has endorsed the opposition candidate for 2027, what is the whole essence of PDP fielding candidates in that same election? So it's not only Nyesom Wike, but maybe they need to have some scapegoats. But I think they should, if they at all that court injunction has not been vacated, that stops them from expelling or suspending Nyesom Wike, they need to go on appeal on that injunction.
It's interesting how there's enough anti-party to go around, Mr. Ojo. In fact, I'm just remembering that in Anambra election, the president has a great relationship with Soludo, the governor. He was even there to commission project. But the president also received their candidate for that election in the November election. So I don't know who the president is going to be tilting towards, his party or his friend. Interesting times in our Nigerian politics. Jide Ojo, public affairs analyst, thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day, Geoffrey.
Absolutely. And that's it on the program. Thanks for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.